I say that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, you know.
What do we mean by focus?
He said the most important thing was we can afford to lose money, but we can't afford to lose. I wouldn't be remotely where I am without.
Colas, the home for wealth and wisdom.
Warren Buffett is the second richest man in the world, worth about $44 billion. He is chairman of the Berkshire Hathaway Corporation. He is a friend. He and his family have given me access and time to talk about his life, his business, his values, and his philosophy about everything. Help me understand the operative idea about Ben Graham of value investing.
Well, Ben just says look at a stock not as some thing that wiggles around or is quoted in the paper every day or is up there on a ticker. He says look at it as a piece of a business. Figure out what the business is worth. If you can't figure out what the business is worth, you've got no business buying the stock. And I'd never thought of it that way. And so I started looking at businesses instead of stock charts and volume and all that kind of thing. And it was amazing what kind of an edge that gave me. And then secondly, he said the stock market is there to serve you, not to instruct you. So you don't look at stock prices as telling you whether you're right or wrong. You're there to take advantage of stock prices when they get out of line with reality. And then thirdly, he said always have a margin of safety, that don't try and drive a 9,800-pound truck across a bridge that says limit 10,000 pounds. Leave yourself some room for error because you don't know everything. So you'll always leave that margin of safety.
Of investing for you. What are you looking at for when you read? You're looking for an interesting company? You're looking for...
Yeah, I'm looking for a business I can understand. I'm like a basketball coach. And if I walk down the street, the first thing I look for is 7-footers. And now once I find the 7-footer, I still got to figure out, whether he's coordinated and whether I can keep him in school and all those things. But if some guy comes up and he says, he's 5'6", and he says, wait till you see me handle the ball and all that, I'm not looking for those. So I leave.
You want to look up at your players.
Yeah, and when I first started, I used to find a lot of 7-footers. Harder to find 7-footers now because my universe isn't as big.
Right.
But I look for things I can understand. I think I know what the economics of the business will look like 5 or 10 or 20 years from now. And it doesn't mean that, I understand what a computer does, but I don't know who is going to be making lots of money off of computers 10 years from now, any more than I knew who was going to be making a lot of money off of television sets back in 1960. Turned out nobody was.
Here is a man that you refer to because of his approach to hitting.
Right.
Represents what to you as a metaphor?
Ted Williams was all about discipline in hitting. He said the most important thing was waiting for the right pitch, and he illustrated in his book, The Science of Hitting. He illustrated that, and he looked at hitting as something that he thought about morning, noon, and night, and always was looking for how to do it better. But discipline, he said, waiting for the right pitch is the most important thing in batting.
And you think about morning, noon, and night. Berkshire Hathaway in what way?
Well, we keep waiting for the right pitch, and we're not going to swing at some pitch that some other fellow might like. I mean, if our favorite pitch is 2 inches above the navel, and some other guy likes it, around the letters or a little lower or something, that's fine. But in business, unlike baseball, there are no called strikes. So you can sit there and the pitcher can throw you IBM at 62 or General Motors at 28 and all kinds of things, and nobody's going to call a strike. If you swing at one of those pitches when it comes across Berkshire Hathaway at 7 3/8, and you miss, it's a strike. But it's a terrific game that way because you can sit there and wait and wait and wait for the right pitch, and there are not many things in life where you get that option.
And that's exactly what you're doing now.
That's what I do now. And I've done it before. There are half a dozen that had a tremendous influence, and certainly Ben Graham influenced me enormously in terms of giving me the investment framework to go forth. I wouldn't be remotely where I am without Ben Graham.
But Graham gave you the principles.
He gave me the foundation.
And you read the book first.
I read the book.
And said, I want to meet this guy?
Yeah, well, I was where I was. But I wanted, and I didn't understand he was teaching, Charlie. When I read the book, and even when I finished Nebraska, and then I was leafing through a catalog of Columbia, and his name popped out at me, and that's when I wrote and said, will you take me? But I had no notion about that.
Why were you willing to leave Omaha and go to New York? Was it that this guy knows something?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to, if I was going to be a disciple, I wanted to see the Messiah.
And you sort of viewed it that way.
Yeah, I did.
In terms of investing.
Sure.
When you read the book, you said to yourself?
I said, this makes sense.
Makes sense.
It makes sense. Nothing up till then had really made sense.
And the principles are still the same.
Principles are absolutely the same.
Having changed what, though, as you change circumstances?
Well, you just see more ways to apply them, and I mean, the applications come up in different forms, but the principles remain the same. I do two things. Call it asset allocation. In other words, we have somewhere between $100 million and $150 million a week coming in to Berkshire, and that's after all the needs of the operating businesses are taken care of. Because if they build plants or anything, that's up to them. But then the remainder comes into Omaha. My job is to allocate that among anything in the world that makes sense to me. I can put it in marketable securities. I can put it in bonds or equities. I can put it in whole businesses. I can sit temporarily with it in cash. But that's my job. That is my sole responsibility. We don't do that by committee. We don't do it by advisors. That's my job. Second job I have, and this is easier if you kind of get the ball rolling, and that's to have talented, high-grade managers running our businesses who are happy running them. So when I buy a business, I'm usually buying the manager with it because I don't know how to run the business. So when somebody comes along and says they want to sell their business, I have to look them in the eye, and I have to decide whether they love the money or they love the business. Now, it's okay to love the money, some, but they have to love the business. They have to have passion for it. Why am I running down here every day, and hardly wait to get to work? I mean, it isn't for the money. It's because I get to do my job the way I like to do it. I get to paint on my own canvas. I feel like I'm Michelangelo down here, and I'm doing the Sistine Chapel now. Nobody else may think so, but they don't say use a little red paint instead of blue paint or something like that. I get to use whatever paint I want, paint whatever I want. I love it. Second thing is that they want applause. I want applause. I mean, I like it when people say that's a good job. And our managers are just the same way. They got a lot of money, most of them, and they want to be treated fairly. So they don't want to be taken advantage of. They want to paint their own painting. They love that, and they get it at Berkshire like no other place. And they want applause. And when they get applause from me, they're getting applause from a knowledgeable observer. I mean, it is not uninformed applause. So. That keeps them, and we've had remarkable success in keeping managers over the years. We have all the money we need. We'd like to have more, but we can afford to lose money. But we can't afford to lose reputation, not a shred of reputation. And therefore, I ask the managers, to judge every action they take, not just by legal standards, although obviously that's the first test, but also by the test, what I call the newspaper test. How would they feel about any given action if they knew it was to be written up the next day in their local paper, to be read by their family, by their friends, by their neighbors, written by a smart but kind of unfriendly reporter. And if it passes that test, it's okay. And I tell them if anything is close to the lines, it's out. And they can always call me if they wanted to check something. But if they call me, there's something wrong with it probably anyway. And that's about it.
What is the best piece of advice you've ever been given, and how has it impacted your personal or professional lives?
I think that, I got an awful lot of good advice from my dad, and he didn't lay it on me. I mean, he just, you picked it up from him, but there was never any of this, do this, do that type of thing at all. But I think he really taught me that it's more important in terms of what's on your inner scorecard than your outer scorecard. I mean, some people get in a position where they're thinking all of the time of what the world's going to think of this or that instead of what they themselves think about it. And if your inner scorecard, if you're comfortable with that, I think you're going to have a pretty happy life. And I think the people that strive too much for the outer scorecard sometimes find that it's a little hollow when they get all through.
You have an extraordinary capacity to focus.
Absolutely. Yep.
You read a lot,
yeah,
and you focus.
Yeah. A lot of people I know that have done well in their own areas focus. In fact, just about the first time I met Bill, we were at a place with 15 people eating dinner, and his dad went around the table and asked everybody what they thought the most important ingredient they brought to their game was. And I answered focus, and I saw Bill nodding his head across the room.
So you knew right there we were soulmates.
Yeah, no, it's focus.
What do we mean by focus?
I mean just concentrating on what's important. I mean, you have to know your game. I was lucky. I was born wired a certain way. I didn't have anything to do with it at all. I was born at the right time in the right place. Huge capital markets. America couldn't have been anything like it any place in the world. So here I am wired for it. And by focus, I mean using that wiring, basically, and trying to get it so that there's, fewer flickers here and there and that sort of thing. So I get up about 6:45 usually, but I may get to the office at 9 o'clock. No, I may get there at 8, depending on what's going on. But I have no schedule to speak of. I mean, here's my date book. Just take a look. I mean,
can I do this? This is not jam-packed with appointments.
8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I just don't do it. So I don't want to live that way. And then I do more reading. I read 5 newspapers a day. Yeah. I read all kinds of annual reports and magazines and 10Ks and 10Qs. And so I would say I spend 75% of the day, at least, maybe 85% reading. And I spend the rest on the phone, and I make I buy or sell any of the stocks or bonds or foreign currencies. I mean, but that doesn't take much time because we're not doing that on a broad scale. And then I go home and I play bridge or read some more. I tell them if you wait till you're 80 to do something you like, I say that's like saving up sex for your old age. I mean, you want to have a passion for what you're doing. Why go through life, waiting for the big moment when you're 82?
Preparing for something else.
Yeah, right. It doesn't make any sense.
His is a life worth talking about because of his candor about it and his remarkable intelligence. And yes, his stunning wealth. He is the subject of many, many newspaper and magazine stories, and more than 20 books have been written about him. For a man so famous and so rich, Warren Buffett has led a remarkably modest lifestyle in his hometown of Omaha.
Subscribe now to ensure you never miss valuable insights from the world's leading financial experts.